There are people in history whose lives, when seen from the outside, make you believe they have nothing left to search for. They already have everything: wealth, reputation, power, and the respect of society. If success had a form, they would be its living image. But the most frightening thing is not poverty or failure. It is when a person stands at the peak of everything this world can offer, and yet inside them there is still an emptiness that cannot be filled. Imagine you are that person. You walk into a marketplace and every eye turns toward you. The most powerful merchants wait for your arrival before they begin their deals. Your name is a guarantee of trust. Your family belongs to the elite. Money is not something you have to think about. But when night falls, when the noise of the world fades away, a question begins to rise in your mind, clearer each time, more unsettling with every moment. What is all of this for? This is not the story of a poor man searching for opportunity. This is the story of a man who had everything, yet went searching for truth. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained, where we explore the deepest stories in Islamic history, not just to know them, but to understand them, to feel them, and to transform the way we see life. And before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this are not only history, they can change your heart. He was Uthman Ibn Affan, born into a noble family from the Umayyad clan, one of the most powerful families in Mecca. From a young age, he was raised in wealth and stability. Unlike many who struggled to survive, Uthman seemed to walk a path already paved with opportunity. He entered the world of trade and quickly became one of the most successful merchants. People trusted him not only for his skill, but for his calm nature, his honesty, and a presence that made others feel at ease. But there was something no one could see. A quiet silence within him. Not a clear pain, not a specific loss, but a subtle feeling that everything he had was still not enough. That something greater, deeper, more real was waiting to be discovered. People often think that only those who suffer search for meaning. But history has shown the opposite. Sometimes those who have everything are the ones who ask the deepest questions. One day during a journey, Uthman had a dream. No one knows exactly what he saw. But when he woke up, something had changed. A sense of unease crept in, as if the dream was not just an image, but a call, a signal, a door opening in his mind, leading to something he had never considered before. He returned and shared the dream with his family. The explanation he received was not what he expected, but it was something he could not forget. It made him think more deeply than ever before. And for the first time in his life, a man who seemed to understand the world began to feel that he understood nothing at all. At that moment, a meeting took place, not by chance, not by coincidence, but as a turning point already written. Abu Bakr saw him, not just with his eyes, but with understanding. He recognized the struggle within Uthman. And instead of speaking about wealth, power, or the things the world praises, he spoke about something else. Something Uthman had never heard in that way before. He spoke about truth, about one God, about a message quietly spreading in Mecca. There are moments in life when a single sentence can change your entire path. This was one of those moments. Something inside Uthman shifted, not because he was forced, not because he was overwhelmed with persuasion, but because it felt like he had finally heard what his heart had been waiting for all along. The door had opened, and this time he chose to walk through it. Abu Bakr brought him to meet Muhammad, who carried a message that the city of Mecca both feared and resisted. When Uthman stood before him, there was no display of power, no army, no wealth. just a man and the truth. But sometimes truth does not need force to convince. It only needs a heart ready to receive it. In that moment, everything changed. The wealthy merchant, the respected man, the one who seemed to lack nothing, finally found what had been missing all along. Not money, not status, but peace. What he did not know was that this decision would cost him everything. Choosing faith was not the end of his journey. For Uthman Ibn Affan, it was the beginning of a path where every step came with a price. There is a truth that not many people understand. When you choose truth, you also choose hardship. And sometimes that hardship comes from those closest to you. News of Uthman accepting Islam spread quickly across Mecca. A man of his status, his wealth, and his respect should have stood as a symbol of tradition and stability. But now he stood with a message that the leaders of Quraysh saw as a threat. To them, this was not just a personal choice, it was betrayal. The pressure began to rise, not from strangers, but from his own family. His uncle, Hakam ibn Abi al-As, could not accept it. He did not see a man searching for truth. He saw a danger to the honor of the family. And when arguments failed, he chose another method: violence. Uthman was tied, locked in a room, and tortured in the hope that physical pain would break his will. They believed that if they tightened the ropes just a little more, struck him just a little harder, he would return. He would say it was all a mistake. But there are things that cannot be forced. And there are beliefs that, once rooted in the heart, cannot be removed by fear. In the darkness of that room, where no one watched and no one witnessed, Uthman made a decision that only those who truly understand faith can make. He did not negotiate. He did not hesitate. He did not look for a compromise to ease his suffering. He chose to stand firm. Even if I die here, I will not leave this path. This was not the voice of someone trying to appear strong. It was the voice of someone who had found something worth losing everything for. In the end, even his uncle had to stop, not out of mercy, but because he realized that some people cannot be broken. The ropes were removed, the door was opened, but Uthman did not walk out as someone defeated. He walked out as someone who had won an invisible battle, the battle against his own fear. But the trials did not end there. Meccan society began to turn away from him. The business paths that were once open became blocked. Partners avoided him. Deals were disrupted. He was no longer free to move as before. Every step was watched. Every action was judged. They tried to isolate him, not with violence, but with pressure. For a merchant, that is a brutal punishment. But for Uthman, it was another test. Would he return to his old path to protect what he had built? Or would he continue forward, knowing the road ahead would only become harder? His answer was not in words, but in action. During those difficult days, an event took place that would change his life again. After the events surrounding Abu Lahab and the broken marriages that came before, Uthman approached the Messenger of Allah with a thought he had never imagined before. He asked for the hand of Ruqayya, the daughter of the Prophet. This was not just a marriage. It was a deep connection to the family of the Prophet. A step forward not only in his personal life, but in his journey of faith. When that request was accepted, Uthman did not just become a husband. He became part of a family carrying a message that would change the world. But that also meant the trials would not decrease. They would increase. The pressure in Mecca became unbearable. Those who believed were not only mocked, but systematically persecuted. In that moment, a decision was made. a decision that would change Islamic history forever. They would leave their homeland. Uthman and Ruqayya were among the first to migrate to Abyssinia. Not because they were weak, but because they understood that sometimes, to protect faith, you must be willing to leave everything behind. Your home, your wealth, your reputation, all of it. When they left, it was not just a journey across land. It was a journey of belief. A step into the unknown with only one certainty. Allah is enough. And this would not be the only time. Later, Uthman would migrate again, becoming one of the very few honored with making 2 migrations for the sake of faith. Some people say they believe. Some say they are willing to sacrifice. But the story of Uthman is not about words. It is about a man who proved his faith with everything he had. There are people who earn respect through strength, through power, through control over the world around them. And then there are people whose presence makes others fall silent, not because they dominate, but because they are so pure, so refined, that their presence makes others reflect on themselves. Uthman Ibn Affan belonged to the second kind. If there was one word to describe him, it would not be wealth or power. It would be haya, a level of modesty so deep it is almost beyond reach. People often misunderstand strength. They think strength must be displayed, must be proven, must be seen. But Uthman followed a completely different path. He did not need to speak much. He did not need to prove anything. He did not need to attract attention. And because of that, he became someone everyone looked toward. There is a moment in history that stands out not for drama, but for its quiet depth. One day, while the Prophet was sitting at home, Abu Bakr entered and was welcomed naturally. Umar entered and was welcomed the same way. But when Uthman arrived, everything changed. The Prophet adjusted his posture, arranged his clothing, as if preparing to receive someone whose presence called for a different level of respect. When Aisha saw this, she was confused. Why was everything normal with Abu Bakr and Umar, yet different with Uthman? The answer of the Prophet became something the world would never forget. He said that this was a man before whom even the angels feel a sense of modesty. Pause for a moment and think about that. Angels, beings without sin, without desire, without human weakness, feel a sense of modesty before a human being. That is not about power. That is about purity. And that was what made Uthman different. He did not live 2 lives. There was no version of him for the world and another when he was alone. He was the same in every situation, in public and in private. No change, no mask, no need to hide. There was once a scholar who was asked how he could remember everything so perfectly. His answer was not intelligence, but discipline. He said that before they learned knowledge, they learned how to walk the right path. Uthman embodied that principle. He protected his gaze, guarded his heart, and in return, Allah protected his mind, his soul, and his memory. But his modesty was not weakness. It was a quiet strength, a strength that did not create noise, but created impact. In Medina, where everything was being built from the ground up, where every brick carried the meaning of a new civilization, Uthman was always present. Not to lead, not to be mentioned, but to contribute. When the mosque was built, he was there. When the market was formed, he was there. When the community was organized, he was there. Not as someone seeking attention, but as someone who understood that responsibility does not need a spotlight. His relationship with the Quran reflected the same depth, or he did not just read it. He lived with it. His copies of the Quran wore out not because of time, but because of constant use. For him, the Quran was not an obligation. It was nourishment, something the heart would feel empty without. If our hearts were pure, we would never grow tired of the Quran. That statement was not advice, it was a mirror. If we feel distant from the Quran, perhaps the issue is not the Quran, but our hearts. People like Uthman do not try to become examples. They do not try to influence. But the way they live becomes a standard for others. In a world where people are used to showing more than they truly are, his story is a reminder that real value is not in what people see, but in what only Allah knows. And from that strong inner foundation, something else began to emerge. Something that would make his name remembered not only for humility, but for actions that forced history itself to pause and remember. There is a paradox that few people truly understand. Wealth, the thing people spend their lives chasing, can easily make the heart the poorest. The more people hold, the more they fear losing. The more they fear losing, the tighter they hold. And the tighter they hold, the more closed their hearts become. But Uthman chose a completely different path. He did not let wealth control him. He used it to free his soul. Medina was not always peaceful. There were times when the survival of the entire community was fragile. One of those times came during a severe drought, when water became more valuable than gold. In that moment, there was a well-known well called rumah. Its water was abundant and pure, but it did not belong to the community. It belonged to one man who understood its value. Water was sold at high prices. The poor had to count every drop. Families had to choose between drinking and saving. In a city struggling to survive, the only reliable water source had become a tool for profit. Then a call was made. Who will buy this well in exchange for a reward in paradise? The price was high, but Uthman did not look at the cost. He looked at the value of the transaction. He stepped forward, negotiated, and bought half the well. Not to control it, but to open it. He declared that on his days, everyone could take water freely. What happened next was simple. People came on his days. They collected water for themselves, their families, their neighbors. On the other days, no one came. Eventually, the owner had no choice but to sell the rest. Uthman completed the purchase, not to own it, but to remove ownership from it. But what matters most is not that he bought the well, it is what he did after. He did not put his name on it. No sign, no announcement, no display. He even stood in line like everyone else, as if he were just one of them. That is a kind of giving the world has almost forgotten. Giving without being known. Giving without recognition. Giving because Allah knows. But that was not the peak. Years later, during a severe famine in Medina, a caravan entered the city. 1,000 camels loaded with goods. For a starving community, this was not just trade, it was survival. Merchants rushed to Uthman offering profit. 10%, 20, 30, 50, even 70. He refused them all. They were confused. Why would a merchant refuse such profit? Then he said something that changed everything. I have found a better buyer, one who gives me 700 times more. They did not understand until he explained. That buyer is Allah, and he gave everything away. Not sold, not divided, given. 1,000 camels and everything they carried disappeared from his wealth, but were recorded somewhere else. This was not generosity. This was a completely different understanding of wealth. For Uthman, wealth was not something to collect. It was something to invest, not in the world, but in the next life. And strangely, every time he gave, he did not become poorer. His wealth increased, because he was no longer controlled by it. The highest example of this came during the expedition of Tabuk. It was a difficult time, with intense heat and long distances, and many hesitated. The Prophet called out, Who will equip this army in exchange for paradise? Uthman stood up. Once, then again, each time giving more. Hundreds of camels, then more, then large amounts of gold. Until the Prophet said something history would never forget. From that moment, Uthman would not be harmed by what he did afterward. That was not permission. It was recognition of a purified heart. Some people use wealth to build a life. Some use it to build a name. Uthman used it to build a bridge between this world and eternity. And that is why his name is remembered not for what he owned, but for what he gave. There is a truth history repeats, yet people rarely learn from it. A community can stand strong against external enemies, but collapse from internal cracks. And then sometimes, the ones who suffer most are the purest among them. When Uthman became a leader, the Muslim world was no longer a small community. It had become a vast empire across many lands and cultures. That expansion brought strength, but also new challenges. One of the most important decisions in history was made during this time. Differences in recitation of the Quran began to appear across regions, not because the Quran changed, but because variations in transmission risked division. Uthman saw that if this continued, unity would be broken at its root. He ordered the compilation and standardization of the Quran into unified copies and sent them to different regions. This was not just administration, it was protection of the future. But while he worked to preserve unity, unrest quietly grew elsewhere. Complaints began, these small at first, then spreading. Some were unhappy with regional governance. Others were influenced by misinformation. As often happens in history, when truth and rumor mix, clarity disappears and chaos remains. Uthman chose dialogue, not force. He listened, sent representatives, tried to reconcile. But some waves, once they rise, cannot be stopped. A letter appeared bearing his seal, ordering punishment of dissenters. It became a turning point. Many believed it was proof of injustice. Uthman denied writing it. Later, it was believed to be forged. But at that moment, emotion mattered more than truth. A group marched from Egypt to Medina, not to talk, but to confront. His house was surrounded. Days passed, water cut off, food limited. He was isolated from the very community he had served his entire life. And he had a choice. So he could call for defense, he could fight back, but he did not. Not because he was weak, but because he understood something many do not. If Muslim blood is shed by Muslim hands, that wound may never heal. He chose patience. He chose not to be the cause of civil war. Some decisions cost not wealth, but life. In his final days, he saw a dream. The Prophet, Abu Bakr, and Umar. Do not break your fast today. Tonight, you will break it with us. When he woke, he smiled, not from relief, but from understanding. The final attack came. They entered his home. Hassan and Hussein tried to protect him, but chaos had already taken over. One of the attackers was Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr. When he grabbed Uthman, the caliph looked at him and said, "If your father saw you now, what would he say?" There was no anger in his voice, only sorrow. It made him hesitate, but it was too late. The blow came, then another. Uthman Ibn Affan fell while reciting the Quran, not on a battlefield, not in glory, but in his home, in silence, in worship. Some deaths end a life, others begin a legacy. His death marked the end of an era. But his story leaves one truth. A person may be misunderstood, isolated, betrayed. But if they hold on to faith until the end, they are never truly defeated. Because true success is not survival. It is leaving this world with a heart still connected to Allah. The greatest lesson from his life: is not only in what he did, but in how he saw life. In a world where people fear losing, he teaches us how to give. In a society of double lives, he teaches sincerity. In times of chaos, he teaches that patience can be the greatest strength. And in his final moments, he leaves a message no speech could ever match. Live in a way that you are ready to meet Allah at any time. How can we apply this today? Start small. When you have the chance to help, do not delay. When you do good, do not seek recognition. Be consistent. Do not become two different people in public and in private. Build your relationship with the Quran not as an obligation, but as nourishment. And ask yourself each day, if today were your last day, would you be ready to leave with this heart? If stories like this move you, if they make you reflect, then this is a place for you. Join the Prophetic History Explained community to explore more powerful stories about the prophets, the companions, and lessons that can change how you see life, faith, and yourself. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel Prophetic History Explained to support us in bringing more meaningful and powerful content in future videos.